Now, I believe we have Dr. Frank. I'm not sure who's coming up next. But what we're going to continue to show you is the lie. They lied, they lied, they lied. They said they weren't on the internet. What you just seen there, it's an eyewitness. What we're going to show you now is things that came out of the machines. We don't get to see inside, but under the Freedom of Information Act, you can get certain things. One of the things which I got in every state in 2020 was everybody's voter rolls. Who registered, who voted, and you know, you have ages and everything in every single county that voted, the age groups, everything. And also the cast vote records. So I think, is it Dr. Frank? Who's up next, you guys? Come on, Dr. Frank. You better. Okay. All right. Now, do you have your presentation?
I think it's loaded. Let's see if they bring it up.
Okay. Let me give you a background here on Dr. Frank. Well, first of all, tell us what your background is, a personal background.
I'm a scientist, did that for 40 years, inventor, building electron microscopes and laser scanners and stuff, equipment. I did that for a lot of years, not paying attention to elections, but doing my civic duty and voting every year.
But you're not what the media calls you, a math teacher, right? A little more than that?
Yeah, a little more than that. 60 scientific publications, cover articles on the leading journals in the world.
Right. And I'm going to tell you, when I met Dr. Frank, I was doing the movie Absolute Interference. I met him for the first time, and when I did those movies back then, it was all live. It was we didn't edit, in real time. Stop that. Let's start over. Kind of like what we're doing right now. And when he started telling me about what he had found inside these machines through the registrations we all can get under the Freedom of. I had to pay a lot of money for them. I think Alabama charged me $40,000, which was highway robbery by John Merrill. Anyway, when I heard his thing, I'm going, wow, it 100% proved they're on the internet and they were computer manipulated. Yes. And it was like a perfect marriage going for everything I had for the cyber evidence that they kept blocking, saying, we're not on the internet, we're not on the internet, we're not on the internet. Remember, what he has comes from the machine company, comes from our states. It's not made up out in the sky. That's why they've never been able to discredit him when he's out there going around the country and warning people, warning counties, and he does that. And now they changed it. Instead of the media attack him, they just call him the Johnny Appleseed of election crime, right? So go ahead and go through and show us what you have.
Well, the question people always, we're talking about machines here, and we're talking about how about the machines being connected to the internet. But people need to understand it's not just that thing you put your ballot through. It's also the EMS, as Patrick was just describing. Right. It's also the poll books. There are all these connections. And I remember in the state of Ohio, for example, we showed that all the Dominion machines were talking to one another as well as being on the internet. So when we talk about machines, we're not just talking about one thing, we're talking about a lot of things. And then just
polling books, tabulators, printers,
exactly.
All of it. Everything that's run through computers in our elections.
And just yesterday, the Epic Times showed this vast network that all of them are connected through. So it's not even just the internet. It's also the cellular network. So there's all these electronic connectability things that are going on. Basically, we just got to get rid of it all. We got to vote Amish. We got to vote all paper, no machines. Yes.
Right. This isn't the plan either, but we've got to get there.
That's right. I'm getting there. So one of the questions Mike asked me is, he says, well, what would an election without machines look like? That's a great question. Right. Well, but what he's really asking, I think, is what does an election with no fraud look like?
With no computer crime.
No computer crime, exactly. And so, but the problem is how do you find an election that's got no fraud in it? So here we are in Missouri. Last year, Ann Kelly was taking me around and introducing me to the clerks throughout the state. And she the last day we were sitting there with the head clerk of the state of Missouri, and he was explaining explaining how safe their machines were and how they weren't connected to the internet. And I said, well, let's just set that issue aside for a minute. Let's just talk about your voter rolls, because I could show you that your voter rolls are being used to hack your elections. And he goes, oh, really? Yeah. And so I started explaining everything. And after about 10 minutes, he just leans back and he says, yeah, we know we have tens of thousands of ballots being stuffed in our elections. He says this, and Kelly goes, what? She says, if you know this, how can you, how can you, why aren't you telling the clerks? And he says, well, because if we told the clerks how many ballots were being stuffed in our elections, the whole state would blow up and everyone would lose faith in our elections. You think? So anyway, you get the point. I think that's all I need to tell you. They know, and he was so happy to tell me the whole lore of all the ballot stuffing that's been going on for years. So the reason I tell you that story is because how would you know if an election didn't have fraud in it when we have decades and decades of history of fraud? Nevertheless, we can show what it's like without machines, and that's what Mike is really asking. Also, where would you get the data? Because we didn't really have electronic databases for the last 60, 70 years, right? Those are more recent additions. So what does an election without machines look like? Well, when did all this start? If you look back, in every state now in the country, in every state, the voter rolls are growing faster than the population. And when you first say that to people, they say, well, gee, Dr. Frank, you know, that's a good thing. We're getting everybody registered. No, that's not a good thing, because in 8 states, they have more people in the voter rolls than they have people. Okay? And you might say, well, what's bad about that? Well, if you have a lot of people in the rolls who aren't real people, and you're mailing ballots to everybody, that's a problem. So,
you're pounding on that there.
I'm sorry. That's what you just touched me. I didn't know what I was doing there. Sorry about that. So I'll give you an example. Here's one example. This is from Kentucky, the state of Kentucky. This is their voter rolls. You notice over time that the voter rolls are growing faster than the population. You can see here, the voter rolls are growing faster than the population. Here's their 18 and older population, goes right by, and right before 2020, there's an extra little surge. The rolls go right past the population. In fact, they're up to 105% of their people registered. That's a sort of interesting thing. Judicial Watch sued them. They've been going around the country suing people for this problem, and they were required to remove hundreds of thousands of people from the rolls, which they just got put right back in again. So in other words, they're not really cleaning the rolls. They say they are. And it ends up, I just don't want people to think it's one county only, so I'm showing you 70 or so of their counties. And if you remember, Adrian Southworth was here yesterday, and she said, yeah, we've got 80 counties now with more people in them than more people in the rolls than they have people. So that's a problem. Judicial Watch sued the county of Los Angeles in Southern California. Just this February, they were required to remove 1.2 million people from their voter rolls because they were illegally in the voter rolls. And think about it. In California, they mail every one of those people a ballot. But that's a problem, do you think? Within 2 months, their voter rolls were right back full again. So how can that happen? Is there some clerk sitting in her office going, oh, gee, you know, I'm going to add people to a roll? You know what? No, it's because they're connected to the internet, and it's a simple algorithm controlling that. And that's what I described to Mike in the movie Scientific Proof. So that's interesting. And how are they doing this, and why are they doing this? And what is their justification for being connected? The rolls are connected to the internet. What's their justification? Well, something happened in 1992. It's called NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act. And after NVRA, in every state now, I've done 46 states, 800 counties, boots on the ground, 3,000 counties I've analyzed. In every single state, you have this sort of thing. I know this is a complicated graph, but if you look back here in 1996, you can see a huge surge of influx in one county here in Pennsylvania. I was just using this as an example. I'm showing the age of the people being added to the rolls by year. And you notice there's this massive influx of voters who are not real voters. They actually didn't even vote that year. I've looked those people up. They started stuffing the rolls with people who are not real voters over the years. Because if you're going to cheat on the internet, if you're going to cheat and flip votes, if you're going to cheat and add votes, you need to have names for every one of those votes you're adding. You need to have names that you can assign ballots to. And if you don't have them in the rolls, you have no credit line to use. And so that's...
You guys hear that? I like that. You have no credit line. You have to have those names. So that's why the early voting falls right into their plan. Right?
Oh, you do not. Yes, early voting. You're basically telling the bad guys who's already voted, so they know who to stuff for. So that's why. So this is just one example. I can go into more detail, but you get the point. The problem is that every state now, every state in the country is doing this, and I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of that. So, for example, this is Pennsylvania. There since 1960. Remember, we're wondering, what did elections look like before machines? That's sort of the question we're pondering here. Notice that the population since 1960 in Pennsylvania, you can see it kind of growing there. But look, that's the top line. That's the voting age population, the blue curve. Look at the black curve underneath it. That's who's registered to vote. Wait a minute. After 1992, look, their voter rolls suddenly started surging. But their population didn't surge. Why are their voter rolls surging? That's happened in every state. The reason it's surging is because they're giving themselves that credit line. They're registering people who are not real voters. They don't always vote at first. And then you notice, like here's the red curve. The red curve is who actually voted. Well, gee, as soon as they started inflating the voter rolls, oh, lo and behold.
Here, I got a question.
Yeah.
So when they're inflating them there, when they were adding to voter rolls before, was it by hand, and then all of a sudden computers came in?
It was when computers were starting to be added in the 90s. They started. So see,
right. Does everybody understand that part? Okay.
Yeah. So the turnout. So I don't have time to show you every state in the country. So what I did is I added them all together. So you can see this is for the whole country. This is the 18 and older population, the blue curve. And you notice that as of 1996, suddenly the voter turnout, the black curve across the whole country has been going up, and the number of votes has been going up. We suddenly became more patriotic. I don't think so. And what happens is if you do simple math, you can say, look, the number of votes is growing faster than the population by about 10%. And that's basically where all the phantom ballots are coming from. If you're going to cheat with machines, you need names to assign to. And that's about 10%, about 30 million of our population. And so the voter turnout has also become more erratic since the addition of machines. And you can see that really clearly. I'll just give you one example from California. By the way, you notice right off the bat, California's population of 18 and older people is starting to diminish, but their rolls are growing. Their rolls are growing, but their population is going down. Interesting, huh? But notice how the voting, presidential, midterm, used to be pretty stable, and it's become more erratic. As soon as they added the machines, look what's happened. And that's a trend I see in every state in the country. And what's also very spooky is if I show you state after state after state, they all have the same shape. So suddenly all the states in the country are behaving exactly the same. How could all the states be behaving exactly the same?
Especially since they're not online.
How could that possibly happen? How could that possibly happen? So this is sort of external evidence that the machines must be operating.
Right.
Anyway, I just show you how it's more volatile. Now, this is the money shot, as we like to call it. It used to be, and this is before machines, that you used to vote in your local precinct. You would go in, you would sign the book, we give you a ballot, you'd fill it out. It was your local neighbors, everybody knew everybody, you could make sure everybody was a real voter. And then at the end, you would, count up the ballots and turn in a number. That's the way we used to run our elections. Well, we don't do that now. In every state in the country now, it's taken 2 decades, but it's that way now. Our rolls are centrally controlled. And I use this example from Wisconsin. I'll show you a second example from Wyoming. Notice that this graph shows you from 2009 to 2021. And I showed this graph in official testimony in Wisconsin. And I was showing Robin Voss, and I said, notice, he's the Speaker of the House there. I said, notice that right before 2012, the rolls suddenly surge, and then they vote, and you take people out. And then midterm, it surges a little bit, and then you take people out. And then right before 2016, the rolls fill right back up again. It's like, wait a minute, why are the rolls all full? And then after the election, this is what's particularly stunning, they remove a fourth of the voters. They remove a fourth of the voters from the voter rolls. And I said, sir, and they're all back again by 2020. How could that possibly happen? You know what his answer was? We have a lot of turnover in those 3 largest counties. 25% in 4 years, I said. Besides, look at all of your counties. Every one of
I want
your
everybody
counties.
to look at that. Does that look like they were online?
Every one of your counties follows the exact same pattern. How could that happen? And one of the messages that you hear is, oh no, we can't have widespread fraud in our state because every county runs their own elections. You think so? I don't think so. And that's month to month.
So it's like that one movie, Identical.
Yeah, identical, yes. So now that's Wisconsin, and some people might say, well, not in my county, and that's one of the things I'm doing tonight.
Right.
Not in my county. Well, here's Wyoming, the most conservative in the country. Here's their 3 largest counties. And you notice the same thing. Wait a minute, they're all behaving exactly the same. And by the way, let's look at all of their counties. And you're going to see they all have exactly the same pattern. Okay, so this is evidence of machine manipulation of the rolls, centrally controlled. And we don't even, I mean, this can't happen naturally. This ain't natural, buddy. Okay, and by the way, in Wyoming, their rolls changed 25% in 2 years. In Wisconsin, it took 4 years to change 25%. So it's even worse. They didn't even know this was happening to them. That's one of the things that's so eye-opening to me about this is I'm just going around the country showing people their own evidence, their own data.
I want to tell you, back when, it's been a little over 2 years now when I met you, and the demonstration back then was very just in its infancy. And
Yes.
Are you surprised that it's this widespread in every county and every state in the country?
Yes, when you first had me on that movie Scientific Proof, I had only done 5 states at that point.
Right.
And I was still looking for a conservative state, because Republicans are good and Democrats are bad. I was still looking for a place where I could not predict the elections. But then, again, I'd only done 5 states. Now I've done 46.
Right.
And I remember when
46 out of 50 is already done, you guys.
Thanks.
This guy never, ever, I think he's only been home, I don't know, a week in 3 years. I mean, I hear it's just on the road. He cares so much for his country, and they can't argue his evidence because it comes right out of the machines. They've lied. They said they weren't online. And I used to go into states and go, like I was up in Ohio. This guy wanted me to endorse him, and he goes, I said, do you think there was election crime with these machines or whatever? And not in our state. Donald Trump won. You're out. If you're running for office and you don't even have the wherewithal that you should have looked into this and care about I'm the biggest, I don't know what you would call the word. The word I hate the most is these politicians go, I'm all for election integrity. That's about as weak a word as you can find. Solve the election crime in our country.
Yes.
Protect us against the election crime. This isn't about integrity. That's such a weak word. Oh yeah, we're all for it, and they're running on this. It makes me sick. These politicians that are running on like election integrity, like Ron DeSantis down there. Oh, I'm all for election integrity. Really, you wouldn't even listen to us when we told you the machines were online.
Right.
Wouldn't even listen. Walked out of the room. So anyway, that's
all right. Very good. Well, I explained that what I'm able to do is the same thing as being able to roll a 20-sided die 83 times. You walk into a county, you roll a die 83 times. You walk into the next county and you roll the die 83 times, and it's the exact same 83 numbers. That's a sort of mysterious thing, isn't it? And yet when you change states, it's a new set of 83 numbers. If you see my longer talks, you know what I'm talking about. But it's an algorithm. I showed it to Mike.
Yeah. Let me explain that one a little. What he's saying, rolling that. You can pick any county in the United States, okay? I'm going to pick my home in Minnesota, Carver County. And when he did this, I actually did this. So yes. I picked an age in my county, 37.
Yep.
Okay? They're age 37. The percentage of 37-year-olds that voted in Carver County in the 2020 election was the same as every single county in Minnesota. And it's the same in every state, but it's just a different starting point in every state.
Yes.
Okay? So that means, and we brought this, I'll give you an example. We brought this to John Merrill, the Secretary of State of Alabama. Okay? We bring it in. One of the first states I went there with Dr. Frank. And I said, your machines are on there. No, we have the most secure machines. They're not on the internet. Well, we showed him in Alabama. We had pick an age, John. He picked an age. He picked a county. We showed him every county was the same.
Yes. And
it was like 0.001%. He goes, well, Mike, that's not, we could be off by that. He said the same percentage of people. He's trying to say that. I go, how about this, John? You have 4,600 people on your voter rolls over the age of 110 that voted. And he looked at me, he said, we live pretty good here in Alabama, don't we, Mike? That's what he said to me. I said, that's sickening what you just said, John. I said, don't you care about your state and your country?
Yes.
But once again, he was part of the cover-up. It's the only way you can explain it. He's a Republican Secretary of State. By the way, they got to our Secretary of States. They got to him. I'm telling you, that's one of the biggest blockers we've had. There's still a lot of good attorney generals out there, by the way, so we've got a lot of hope there. But the Secretary of State, no.
Boom.
So what I want to tell you is you look at these patterns and you see, pick your state and pick a county, and you could say, okay, the 35-year-olds, 37-year-olds, 42-year-olds, the same percentage in every county? And you go, well, is that normal? No, it's not normal.
No,
ever. They're all over the board. And so anyway, keep going down.
Yeah, well, you said give me multiple states of examples. So I'm just showing you, here's 6 different states, and I can predict it in every state. But you notice every state has a different shape, yet I can predict it in every state. Why? Because it's controlled in every state. Anyway, that was just giving you 6 states. Here I can show you another 6. And basically, since we're asking the question, how has it changed over time, this is a simple way to show how the shape has changed over time as well. And the graph closest to you is what elections used to look like before we were stuffing them with ballots. And then as you move back, it's every 2 years. This is one example, one county in Pennsylvania. As you get closer and closer to the present, you notice that suddenly a whole bunch of other people are voting. A whole bunch of older people that didn't used to vote are now voting, and a whole bunch of younger people that didn't used to vote are now voting. And that's the stuffing that's going on.
Well, when you say stuff and explain that, you're just pulling names is what he's saying. You're pulling names.
Yes.
That's that, what do you call it, that credit line.
Yeah.
They're just names. They're not people out there
Yes.
stuffing these. It's computer stuffing. They're names. And when you don't have enough names, okay, when you run out of names, this is another thing they'll do when they're not on the internet. Now what they'll do is they'll just vote for these names. They'll go for names that don't usually vote, or that are, these fake names that, people that are deceased. But they'll also, when they're in panic, they'll pull people and then just vote for them, right? The computer, I got to use these names. I hope they don't vote. And that's why you have thousands of people, like in California in the Newsom runoff, or the Newsom, whatever they were doing with them there, that they were voting yes or no. People got there and they said, you've already voted, by the tens of thousands in that runoff. Because that wasn't an early voting where they could grab the names. So they just had to go ahead and vote for people. You watched in real time go from 200,000 yes to no in real time. And they're not connected to the internet? I mean, come on. So keep going.
Sure. So I've already shown you how the voter rolls are manipulated in every state. I give 2 examples. But here's an example of how the turnout is manipulated. It's hard for me to show you a graph for every county all at once, right? So this is a way for me to show you every county in California. I just picked one state. And this is from 1990 to present. And you notice this is the number of people who turn out in every county in California. And at the beginning, over here on the left, you can see what random elections used to look like before machines. But notice what's happened over time here. Now the state is working exactly in sync. Every county is voting out.
What's the one line that's off whack there?
That's one county. It's Modoc. It's a tiny little county, and nobody.
They don't have machines.
They probably don't.
What?
They do hand counts for their municipals. So that's it. I bet you that one's not connected to the internet.
That's the one that's not connected to the internet, everybody.
Right. I'd have to go check that out. But
I don't even. Yeah. I mean, because in math and in power of numbers.
Yes.
They don't lie. It's fact. You can't, it doesn't go 1 + 1 is 2 + 4 is 4. Numbers don't lie. And when you get the power of numbers, when it's that many, then you get these patterns. It's impossible. It becomes impossible without manipulation, without being on the internet.
And if you're going to have manipulation by computers, you have to have an algorithm, and that's basically the 6th order polynomial, which we've talked about. Watch Scientific Proof to get more detail on that. But the point is, the 6th order polynomial is different in every state. And I just wanted to show you 2 different states. This is Colorado, the upper left, and Nebraska, lower right. You notice the shape of the 6th order polynomial is different. And it's different in every state. But once you know that, with 6 numbers, I can completely control an election in a state. I don't need anything else, just 6 numbers. And it's a simple equation. That's the point. And I know we don't have to get into that, Jay, but you get the point.
I want to tell you, I'm going to say this because I had to wrap my head around this. So let's say if they didn't do that, let's say you had a county, you guys, let's say you had a county, my county, Carver County. And if you didn't grab all these different ages and set it up, like that, if somebody ever looked in there and you had 20,000 25-year-olds vote and nobody else,
right,
you'd be caught, right?
Yes.
Kind of like, and I'm going to tell it again, kind of like in the state of Georgia a year ago. That lady, that nice lady down there, she's a Democrat, her and her husband, 3 Democrats, everybody. And she wakes up in the morning and she had lost. She was supposed to have won. But she checked out and she got 0 votes in her own precinct. Think of that, 0, her and her husband.
Where she voted for herself.
And the way things are now, if they'd have gave her 2 votes, they'd have said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, nobody loves you but your husband." But they gave her 0, so they had to look into it. You understand that? That's such a deviation. It's 0. You better find out. There's obviously something with the computer, right? And I think this is a good time to inject the other story down in Georgia. So this lady, anyway, they had to open up the machines. What a concept. They found that she had 3,700 votes, which put her from 3rd to 1st. And they did it immediately. Quick. Okay, now, about 7 counties over, 3 more Democrats. This lady, she gets 4,600 votes. And I could be off by a little. I don't know. Alan Duke can fact check me. I don't care to say. So 4,600 votes. She wasn't on the ballot. Now, let me explain that. She wasn't a write-in. Her name wasn't there to check. She had said 2 months prior she was going to run. In fact, I think she announced she was running, and then she backed out right away. So now she gets 4,600 votes. Now there's a guy here, and they want this guy. This guy was going to win. And this was done across our country in other races too, like Tina Peters for Secretary of State in Colorado. You bring in a no-name person, and then you set it on the internet, and you pull votes from this person to give to the no-name, and then this one wins. Okay, this lady that got 4,600, okay, they had to look into that because she's not on the ballot. It didn't even make the news. That should have been headlines around the world, right?
Yes.
Should have been headlines around the world because there's a deviation we can all. She wasn't on the ballot. So anyway, what they did, they looked into it. I don't know if I'm pretty sure it was Crooked Brad Ratzenberger, the Secretary of State, Republican, down in Georgia. You know what they said? It was a programming error. I thought they weren't on the internet and programmed, but here's the key, everybody. In order to program that, remember, they had to type in her name. Let's not forget that. They had to actually type in the crime. It's disgusting, and everyone, this is when, in our country and around the world, it's so hard to wrap your head around that this could how could they do this to us in all 50 states? Well, you've been provided tools, computers, where you don't have to have 1 million people out cheating, which it would take to do what's happened to our country. It would take millions. Like I told you yesterday, I can't imagine people are genuinely good people. I'm not going to grab, 5,000 people. All right, everybody, nobody's looking. Let's run into Wisconsin and vote illegally because we don't live there. Or dead people going, if their relatives going, let's vote for, my dad that passed away. Let's put his name down. That didn't happen. They lied to us. They were on the internet. Keep going.
All right, one last example, and then I think you guys will get the point. This is an example from Missoula, Montana. The top curve, the blue curve, is the population by age, and the gray curve is who's in their rolls by age. That includes the inactive voters. And the black curve shows you by age who's registered to vote there. It looks like they've got just about everybody registered to vote. It looks like above about age 60 or so. And here's who supposedly voted in 2020. The red curve is who voted by age. In other words, everybody above about the age of 40, 95% and more voted in their election. I don't think so. But that's an interesting curve to see. But this is why I'm showing you this. Because in Montana, the voter rolls we got shows you how people voted. Whether they voted in person, that would be a real election, or whether they voted by mail. Here's who voted by mail in Montana, Missoula, Montana, the next curve. But look at this. This is who voted in person. Okay?
Look at that, everybody.
It's a different shape altogether. In fact, let me help you see that by just, it's different in every county. And let me show you, I'm trying to get this done. Here, this black curve is who's registered to vote. Here's who voted in person. And I think that's real. People show up, they vote for real. And that's different shape in every county in Montana. I can't predict that, but guess what? If you add in the machine manipulation, if you add in the mail-in ballots, suddenly I can predict it. And what we're really saying is basically the computers enable them to know who's voted and not voted. You have who's real, who voted by mail, who's real, but then the algorithms fill it in. And so you want to know what an election looks like that has no election fraud in it, no machines in it. It's unpredictable.
It's unpredictable. Now, I want to say this, everybody. I tell you, this is even 100 times more powerful than when we met. I'll tell you, you've done the world and our country the best service imaginable.
Thank you,
Dr. Frank. But just hold on. I want to say,
yeah, sure.
The day of voting in person, I want to show everyone, because I really want to talk to you about that. There's a lot of talk out there about ballot harvesting and early voting and all this stuff, right? Remember, they need, what do they call that, credit? They need names, okay? Now, so the bottom there is show where they voted in person. That's the in person. So you see, okay, go ahead and show it.
This is the in-person, this gray spot, this 18%. Right. And then the blue is who voted.
And you see that the people that voted early, all the counties are the same. If you take the fraud out or the computers out, it's all over the board. You can't, it's random. Of course it would be random. You can't say this many percentage of 25-year-olds voted, this many percentage of 32. And we have another example. When we're bringing out the cast vote records, we're going to show you of all the cast vote records we have in 2020 and 2022, we've only found 5 counties where it wasn't computer manipulated. And you know what it showed? It's identical what he says. It's all random. It's what it should be. You can't predict 6 Democrats come in, 2 Republicans, 6 Democrats, and you certainly can't predict, let's take 2 25-year-olds, now we want 3 37-year-olds. You can't do it except for they were online, correct?
Yes, I cannot predict who votes in person. And I gave you 3 examples. I kind of went speedily before. But this is 3 examples, 3 different counties in Montana. I can't predict who votes in person and I can't predict the outcome until you add in the machines. Then I can suddenly predict every single county.
So in your mind, this stuff that's out there where they're saying, let's go ballot harvest, you think that's probably a good thing or bad?
Oh, it's a bad thing. You don't want to give them any knowledge. You don't want to, so that they know how to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
Or how,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's and we're going to talk about other stuff. We're going to get into all that later on today.
Sure.
Talking about, because we don't. By the end of the day, everybody, when we announce this plan at 1 p.m. Central Time, that's going to secure our elections immediately. It's going to unite everyone in the country. So you have these things out there that everybody wants to do some. Everybody wants to do some. A lot of them are misconstrued in what is the right thing, what is the wrong thing to do. But we've got all the knowledge now. We have a plan. We have a plan that aligns everything up beautifully. So, and I'll tell you, I'm very surprised. I didn't realize how far and how many counties and the real people in person. Where, of course, it's random.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So, once again, I would thought for an encore here. Thank you, Dr. Frank. You guys are a hero. He is a hero in this.